Yep, thanks for allowing me to come back. As Ann mentioned, I was able to be here last year, at the other facility. Um, my message has changed quite a bit, and so just look forward to being able to share with you where things are at. Feel free to have, if you have questions or whatever, just raise your hand as I go or at the end here. But mind the bird. What we're going to talk about today, I really want to hit 3 points. First of all, digital curation in towns and districts. So what I mean by that is, what's the digital experience that's going on when you're in a town or in a district within a larger urban area? What's that digital experience? Is there a better local model for mobile ads? And I think there is. And something that we're in the process of creating called an ambient coin mine. So for those of you, I'm just going to quick ask: who here is familiar with crypto coins? Okay, good. Okay, and on a scale of 1 to 10, anybody more than a 5? Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. 6. 10. Okay. Great. So that just helps me, because one of the things I've learned is that I need to understand where the audience is at in terms of their understanding on the crypto space. So it sounds like most of you have at least a basic understanding of the crypto industry. So I'll towards the end I'll be getting to what is an ambient coin mine. It's not anything that's out there today, but it's something that I think can serve communities. So let's start with digital curation in towns and districts. So first of all, what do we experience today? So is there anyone here? Does anyone here use their smartphone as they're going for? Is there like shopping, things like that? Do some people do that? Mm-hmm. Okay. What experience do you have as you go from store to store to store? Anybody want to tell us what that is, or else I can just guess?
Well, I just log into, if I'm at Michael's, press on it, see if they have any deals of the day or
yeah, okay.
Whatever, so individual stores.
Yeah, individual stores can have their own app, right? And their own experience. And if you want to have an app, you can kind of have an app for each store. And if it's a store you care enough about, you'll check in, right, and see what they might have for you. That's fair. Could towns and districts do better? So this is my question. So as people are experiencing a town or a district, right now, what that expectation kind of that's being, because of how the industry is developed, it's sort of choppy, and it's not, when you go from venue to venue, which is how people experience the world, it's not consistent. And so you may have an app for this venue and no app or no digital curation at the next. And oftentimes it's the stores that we love the most, those local stores, that don't have the infrastructure to be able to have their own app, right, or to push it or keep it up to date or those types of things. So my question is, and our question at Mind the Bird is, if we step back and look at the digital experience throughout a town or throughout a district, could that be unified? Could that be curated? And could that include more people than just the national chains? If so, if that's something that communities want to have, if that's something that select towns and districts want, what would be the distinguishing factor? That's one of the questions that we have asked ourselves. And I think it's common unity, which I think probably was the root word of community. But this is what I mean by it. When you have organizations and people that want to work together, when you have like a main street, for example, all the stores on a main street, do they want to collaborate to create an experience that works across those venues? If they do, to the extent that a community has that common unity and wants to say, you know what, we want our digital experience here to be curated. We already wash our windows to make those look great. We make sure that the streets are paved and the floors are washed. Why not, now that we never had to do this before and it's kind of invisible, so it's not something you have to do, but why not curate a digital experience across a town or a community so that citizens and guests, when they're there, they can experience something that on the one hand doesn't annoy them, it's not constantly buzzing, we don't want to do that, but at the same time allows there to be a curated experience that does work across venues and includes even the independent vendors that right now don't really have a voice on digital. So I think the distinguishing factor is the level of common unity that exists in these towns and districts. I think that can be leveraged, and I actually think towns and districts have an advantage over their urban counterparts, because towns and districts, if they're really having common unity, they can work together to get further faster than you could do in with the bureaucracy of an urban area. So I'm going to switch now and say, is there a better local model for mobile ads? I think that there is. Can someone explain to me location-based services? Is there anyone here that would just venture in a sentence or two to say, what is location-based services? Go ahead.
Basically, if you're wandering around, your cell phone will ping your location and give you alerts such as deals or sales or events that are relevant to your location. So, for example, if CBTC was having a bake sale, I would walk by or walk up, and all of a sudden my phone would tell me, "Hey, check out the bake sale, and here's a coupon for 10% off."
Yes, that's exact. Thank you. And I did. We've never met before, but that was if I ever present again, I hope you're there. Yeah, so location-based services, it says like, where are you and what's around you, right? But that model, if you step back again and look at it, that model, a large part of that model is really built on Silicon Valley knowing where you're at, and then the idea that they somehow then, once they know where you're at, then they know the context of what's around you. And that sort of kind of works okay. And don't get me wrong, I used location-based services to get here today, so I'm not saying bashing those entirely, but I am saying that model is limited. I think it's inherently flawed, because it's depending on people that aren't in the community to be able to somehow understand what the ever-changing context is in those places. And right now, the people that get left out of those spaces are the people that are the independent vendors and really the smallest of the vendors that, they're not going to have the ad at the bake sale today. It's going to be for one of the national chains that, their leaders made some decision, and so their advertisement shows up, right? It's not that bake sale, and that bake sale is what's getting missed. And so at Mind the Bird, what we want to do is we actually want to turn that model upside down, empower the community and everyone in it to be able to have a voice on digital, and to be able literally at that bake sale, so I'm glad that bake sale is going on today, for that bake sale ad to be able to be on your phone. And we have a technology that allows everyone in the community to be able to participate in that. Every computing revolution decentralized data. So, right, 50 years ago there was the supercomputers, and then there was the revolution towards PCs that democratized data. It put the hands of the control into the hands of people, and so PCs took off and really left supercomputing in the dust. And then came the internet, right? Now all of a sudden people had access to information that they never had access to before, and that was a whole other wave of computing revolution. Then came mobile. We can have this information wherever we are, whenever we want it. And next is the Internet of Things. And I would just say that every computing revolution has democratized data. And so when you see things like distributed ledger, which would be the type of thing that powers these crypto coins and what is called blockchain, when you see things like this come up, we have to step back and looking at historically, whenever there's been something that's been revolutionary that empowered different people to be able to democratize data, that led to kind of a revolution. And I think that's what's happening. So I think blockchain is one of those. I think distributed ledgers are one of those. And I think how that plays into IoT, the Internet of Things, will be exciting for this next 5 to 10 years and possibly beyond in terms of what that brings. So I think there's a better local model for mobile ads. I think that model empowers everyone in the community to have a voice. And I think the current model where we tell Silicon Valley where we're at and then depend on them to tell us our context, I think that's an inherently flawed model that can be exploited. So the last thing I'll just share about before questions is ambient coin mines. So this is something we made up because we had to. by listening over these years to different stakeholders, we learned what different requirements were to pull off something like this in a community, in a town or a district. And the ambient coin mine is the only thing we found that meets all of those requirements. So I'm just going to ask this question. How is it that crypto coins have any value? And when I look at crypto coins, and this is, I'm just speaking for myself here as just a person. When I look at crypto coins, I think, does this series of letters and numbers, I don't see how they can have value. It doesn't make sense to me. And when you watch the price swings, it almost is evidence that they don't. Because it's like, how can it go up that much and then down that much? How is that tied to reality? It's basically, it seems like speculation with gas poured on it, to me. Okay? Now, if you're a huge crypto fan, which I actually am a crypto fan, but I